somewhere outside Paris. Right now, there is a concrete pitch with chipped white lines and a goal missing its net. A group of kids are playing on it. Some of them have never left their neighborhood. Statistically, 1 or 2 of them will eventually walk onto the biggest stage in world sport. That is not an exaggeration. That is a pattern, and it has repeated itself, generation after generation, for almost 30 years. Why does this keep happening in France, and almost nowhere else at this scale? The easy answer is talent. France just produces brilliant players. People say, as if talent were something that simply falls from the sky over one particular country more than any other. But talent falls everywhere. Children kick balls against walls in Lagos, in Sao Paulo, in Manila, in 1,000 cities you've never heard of. The real question isn't where talent exists. It's where talent gets found, shaped, and sent out into the world. And on that question, France has built something close to an industrial system. To understand it, you have to go back to 1998. France hosted the World Cup that year and won it, with a team that looked unlike almost any previous champion. Players with roots in Algeria, Armenia, Guadeloupe, New Caledonia. The team was nicknamed Black Blanc-Pour, a phrase referencing the team's mix of black, white, and North African players. For a brief moment, it became a symbol of what a multicultural France could look like at its best. But the deeper, less visible outcome of that World Cup wasn't the celebration. It was the federation's response afterward. The French Football Federation required every professional club in the country to operate a certified youth academy, meeting strict national standards. Not optional, not a nice to have, a requirement. Clubs that didn't comply faced real consequences. Think about what that does over time. Imagine every single professional club in a country being forced, by law, to continuously develop young players to a defined standard. Year after year, decade after decade. You don't just get good players. You get an entire ecosystem, an assembly line stretching across an entire nation, constantly producing talent whether anyone is watching or not. Layered on top of that is something even more specific. A network of regional development centers spread across the country, often referred to as pôles espoirs, or centers of hope. Promising players are identified as early as 12 or 13 years old. During the week, they train with national coaches focused on technical precision, tactical intelligence, and spatial awareness, the kind of decision-making under pressure that usually only senior professionals are exposed to. On weekends, they return to their regular clubs. In other words, the system doesn't wait for a player to become good and then notice them. It finds them early, drops them into an environment built specifically to accelerate development, and does this continuously, at scale, across the entire country. Now here's where the story gets uncomfortable, and also where it gets most interesting. A huge proportion of this talent doesn't come from wealthy Parisian neighborhoods. It comes from the banlieues, the suburbs that ring cities like Paris, Lyon, and Marseille. These are areas shaped by decades of immigration from former French colonies in North and West Africa, areas that are often economically poor and socially marginalized. Saint-Denis, just northeast of Paris, is one of the poorest departments in the entire country. It is also one of the most productive footballing regions on the planet, having produced players who have gone on to define the sport at the highest level. There's a researcher who became something of a quiet legend inside the French Federation, a scout known by the name Momo, whose job for years was specifically to work these neighborhoods, identifying talent that the traditional pathways might overlook. Why would some of the poorest areas in the country become some of the most prolific talent factories in world football? Part of the answer is brutally simple. In communities with limited access to other paths toward economic mobility, becoming a professional footballer represents one of the few visible, achievable routes to a different life. That creates intensity. Kids aren't playing for fun on weekends. For many, this is the most serious thing in their lives, practiced with a level of focus that's hard to replicate in environments where football is just one of many comfortable options. But there's something else, something structural. Researchers studying global football migration have pointed out that France sits at a unique historical intersection. Colonial history created deep, lasting connections between France and countries across North and West Africa. Those connections shaped patterns of immigration that brought talent, families, and football culture directly into French cities, decades before academies were ever formalized. By the time the academy system was built, it wasn't being built in a vacuum. It was being built on top of communities that already had deep, organic relationships with the sport. So you have three things stacking on top of each other. A historical population shaped by migration with strong footballing culture. A nationally mandated academy system, legally required across every professional club. And a network of elite development centers identifying and accelerating talent as young as 12. That's not luck. That's not a generational fluke. That's three independent systems compounding on top of each other for nearly 30 years straight. And the data backs this up in a way that's almost staggering. According to research from the Size Football Observatory, which tracks player migration across world football, France produces more young expatriate players, footballers under 23 playing abroad, than any other country on Earth. Not just more talented players, more players, period, at a rate no other nation matches. France isn't just winning, it's exporting. Walk through the current landscape of European football, and the pattern is everywhere. Bayern Munich's most valuable player is French. Real Madrid's biggest star is French. Premier League clubs are stacked with French academy graduates. This isn't 5 or 6 standout individuals. It's a sustained, continuous output, the kind of thing that only happens when a system, not a generation, is doing the producing. Here's the part worth sitting with. When people ask why France is suddenly dominating world football, the word suddenly is doing a lot of work it doesn't deserve. There's nothing sudden about it. What looks sudden from the outside, a new wave of brilliant French players seemingly appearing out of nowhere, is actually the visible output of a process that's been running, quietly and continuously, for decades. The kids on that concrete pitch outside Paris aren't an exception. They are the next batch. Somewhere outside Paris, right now, there is a concrete pitch with chipped white lines and a goal missing its net. In a few years, you'll probably know one of their names.